Hey, what's up, guys? It feels good to be back. My name is June Hlongwane. If you have subscribed to my YouTube channel, which I'm grateful if you have, you would have seen that in the past sort of political events, which have been major, there's just been a lot happening. I was using the community post section on here on YouTube just to give my thoughts and opinion on some of the things that were happening as it was happening in real time. I just found it to be more easier to just give my views on issues through that sort of platform as opposed to doing a sit-down video. For many reasons, work has been hectic, and coupled with that, a lot of the stuff that's happening on social media, what we're seeing in the news. So I just want to kick off by saying I hope you guys are doing okay. I hope everyone is well. I know with politics, I follow politics because I'm passionate about it. I think politics is a really integral part of our lives, but I know that it can also have some impact in just your mental state and just how you view the world at times. I get so despondent and sometimes I feel so discouraged to be living in South Africa with everything happening, but then I wake up in the morning and I'm like, but this is where I am. Where am I going to go? If I decide to go, why? And it's just a lot of things, but I just hope that everyone is keeping well. And to get to the purpose of this video, I was chilling. I'm recording this on a Saturday, chilling, just catching up on videos that I probably missed during the week or videos that I didn't really have time to watch. And one of the videos was on the State of the Nation podcast, which is hosted by Mike Shem. If you follow politics in South Africa, especially sort of in the new media space, YouTube being the platform I'm referring to, you would have come across the State of the Nation. He's hosted some prominent political leaders, and he's just one of those people that just is kind of hard-hitting in the questions that he asks political leaders. So that's how I got to find out or know about the State of the Nation podcast, and I've been a subscriber and someone who follows that channel ever since. Recently, he hosted the current mayor of the city of Tshwane, Dr Nasiphi Moya or Moyo. And as the interview is busy going on, they're just basically chatting. And somewhere in the interview, Dr Nasiphi Moyo, yes. Doctor, let me just get her name right. Let me be respectful. I've got the clip right in front of me. Dr. Mayor Nasiphi Moya, yes. Somewhere in the clip, I believe she just explained what my biggest issue with socialism. I don't know if she is aware that this is essentially what she did, and this is not to say that maybe she's anti-socialism. I'm not sure what her political stance or where she falls in this political ideology sort of spectrum, and I'm not trying to drive any of that narrative. I'm just saying she made a statement here. I'm going to roll the clip for you guys, which is precisely my biggest problem with socialism. Let's roll the clip, and I'm going to be right back with my commentary.
This country must change. We have people who may care more about themselves than they care about what they're supposed to be working for. And maybe I heard one of the ministers talking about conscription. And I'm saying you use it so loosely. Yeah. But also what is wrong is not with us ordinary South Africans. It's those who are in power who forget that their job is to look after the rest of us as ordinary South Africans. So the issue of culture, where you have people, when we were growing up, we knew that we made jokes about home affairs, how they close at a certain time. If you go to public clinics where we were going, the nurses will shout at magogos, and that's the culture that public servant has been selling to this country, that if you don't have medical aid, you deserve to be yelled at by a nurse in a public clinic. Whether you can justify to say they're under pressure, whatever, but that's what we as poor people grow up knowing, that if you are poor, you're going to be subjected to these things because government is paying for it, you're not paying for it. The bottom line is that as South Africans, we must also start being smart about how we use the only power that we have, because the system is designed. We have a heavily politicized system in South Africa. Even business must understand politics. Now, that right was earned. in 1994, when it was a good thing to happen for us. But I think along the way, people have been relaxed that they don't follow up on their vote.
So what really stands out for me in the analogy or the illustration that she makes about what happens in a system like South Africa, right, is because people are not paying for certain things or services. She made an example about the healthcare, home affairs. People are more tolerant to things that are not of good standard, of good quality. Like, for instance, like she says, that people are more tolerant to be yelled at a hospital. I mean, it's a known fact that when you're a young woman and you're going to deliver, especially if you deliver or have a child out of wedlock and you go deliver at a public hospital, you're most likely going to have a really tough time. And we can justify that from a point of saying, no, you've got a mom in every other elderly woman and that they just basically parenting in that state. It's understandable. But when you are delivering a baby and you are in labor, is that really the time to say, no, is that the time to be yelling and asking, why are you pregnant? Where's the father? No, it's not. But people brush it off. People accept, people tolerate it because they know they are not paying for that particular service. So before we get into precisely what she's talking about and subsequently her statement about how we need to get smart. And I say we need to get smart. I'm not referring to each and every single South African in the country, because socialism will always kind of be lurking around in some aspect, but we do not want full-blown socialism. We do not want a system that is heavily focused on socialism. But like I said, there will always be some sort of a social element in society, because you've got the elderly, you've got disabled, and you've got people, for example, who do not have parents, who would need support from the government. But if it's heavily focused on socialism, that is sort of where I'm coming from. So when I say we, or in this case when Nasiphi says that we need to be more smarter in terms of how we approach politics and who we put at the top and who we select, I'm mainly referring, even in this video, to the active participants, to the voter base, because we know this, not every single South African participates in elections. The voter base is a fraction of the population in South Africa. In fact, it has been said that the voter base is decreasing. So the results that you're seeing in the polls does not represent every single South African in the country. And often at times, people who do not participate in elections are people who would not necessarily be regarded as active members or participants in politics. It's people who've either tapped out, switched off, or just don't believe in politics in general. So when I say we, I'm talking to people who are active participants in politics. Remember, where we are currently in South Africa, we've got about a 66% of the active participating citizens who are participating actively in politics moving towards the left. That is the first and foremost where the problem begins, in my opinion, because you've got about 66% if you look into, or if you take into consideration left-leaning parties and the support that they garner in sort of the last elections, when we had elections. Sorry, I was having a cold drink just now. If you take what happened in the 2024 elections that were held in May of 2024, you've got about a 66% of people who are moving to the left. So that's the kind of person that I'm talking to. I think it's important to first understand socialism in the context of South Africa, because sometimes it can be very blurry in terms of what actually is socialism. I know some people believe in socialism, but what actually socialism is, when ANC took power, when you basically introduced a new democracy and it was a new dawn, ANC came into power. When they came into power, it is clear that they identified a specific group in our society. We've got a population of X amount at the time. They identified a subset of people within the population, and they said, this is the group that we are going to appeal to, speak to, and this is the group that we are going to commit to assisting, to giving support to. And you can question the intention of it at the time. A lot of it would have been inspired by what we call previously disadvantaged, right? So whoever is labeled as previously disadvantaged, meaning in the previous system they were not considered or they were excluded, in the current system that person becomes a previously disadvantaged, therefore there's higher priority or focus on that person. So that's how it begins. ANC identifies who this particular subset of the population or society is, and they set up everything around supporting this subset. If you look at the National Democratic Revolution, the NDR, which was formed, like I said, way back before the African National Congress were able to take power away from their party government, and essentially form the current government that we have today. I know with the 7th administration, ANC kind of took a knock, but they're still a majority. They still have the highest number or percentage of support. So essentially what happened is, like I said, they identified the group. The intention of it, like I said, when you look at the National Democratic Revolution, does make me a bit skeptical that was it really about helping this particular subset of people, or did the African National Congress identify this group of people and said, this is probably the only way that we can stay in power, retain power? Because what happened with socialism, which is again my other issue with it, is it sort of creates like a drug. The drug on the one side, and Thomas Sowell speaks about this perfectly. He illustrates this perfectly, that leaders that lead with socialism. So if you have a political party or political player coming into the scene and they're immediately speaking to socialism issues, that person is almost like they know what's going to happen. The moment that they get power, the moment that they get support, that support is not always organic, but it's support that is coming because of this carrot that they're dangling. So ANC identifies, comes into power, they commit, they say in their manifesto, at the rallies, we'll give you housing. And remember, the housing project started rolling out all the way back in 1996 already in South Africa. So that was already in motion in terms of, we are going to give you, we are your government, we are going to take care of you. That is socialism. But at the time, no one is really paying attention. Like I said, investment, euphoria, it was all at a high. Nelson Mandela, I mean, what a stellar leader, right? He was globally recognized. No one ever thought that this would ever turn, but that's what happens. It eventually gets to a point where it does turn. So back to sort of the trajectory. Fine, they commit, they identify, we're your government, we are going to support you, we are going to give you what you need. Like I said, then everyone gets hooked. The guys leading get hooked because their voter base it's an easy win. The voter base is coming from this because we give them housing, we give them free education, we give them free food, we give them feeding schemes. It's easy. We get our voter base. But on the other side, the people who also are beneficiaries of these systems and the support, they also become dependent on this help. Because now, month on month, if you take, for example, the 350 grant that was initially introduced to just take people over the line after what happened in the COVID, it's a dependency, right? People might not know it, but there's like a psyche to social welfare that happens, and people might not realize. Like, you get hooked to it, you know what I mean? Like, for example, if you are getting something from the government in order to take care of your child, that you plan every month is, okay, cool, I'm going to get this from this from the government. So there is a dependency, whether we want to admit it or not, but especially if it's like one of these social grants and all of that, there's a dependency. So everyone gets hooked into the system. But now, where the problem comes in, just to kind of get to my point, is that money runs out. Money runs out because you've got a full-blown socialism system happening where a larger portion of your population, because remember, for ANC to have retained power over the years, it is indicating that a large amount of South Africans are benefiting from welfare versus South Africans who are not. That's why when you have more people who are moving out of socialism benefits, getting into jobs, starting their own businesses, becoming independent, the ANC suddenly is no longer as attractive to them, right? Because now they've got money in their pockets, they're paying for what they want, so the exchange is very transactional. There are no emotional ties, and I pay, I give the money, I demand what I want. If I don't get what I want, I'm going to the next person. So that's the other side. So essentially why we're here in the first place, or why ANC has won power over the years, is because a larger portion of South Africa is dependent on the social welfare, and it has only but increased over the years, whether it is reliance for children, for the child grants, for the unemployment, free electricity, free housing, and all of these other things, because sometimes we don't realize that it's not just on the social grants that people get via these SASSA schemes or SASSA cards, but it's housing, free electricity, free water, free services. So by the time, most people don't even realize, but most people are fully catered for by the government from start to finish. What happens in that system? Money runs out. That's just the reality. Money runs out, and when money runs out, the standard is immediately lowered. And where socialism then kicks in, full-blown socialism, is then the government then just sees everyone as an equal. When they're sitting there drafting their budgets, allocating their money, they don't allocate based on June really, really, really likes a red t-shirt. She doesn't just want any t-shirt, she wants a red t-shirt. They then say, we're going to give all people t-shirts, whether you get a blue, green, and really, really, really love a particular color. It's no longer what you ideally want, it's what the government can afford. Because now they have less money coming to the fiscus, because now they've got more mouths to feed. They don't have enough money to be able to boost the economic growth, build infrastructure, and anything that comes in has to go to this welfare system that they've created. That's why governments end up printing money, and in those countries you will never find growth, because, like I said, the psyche of welfare lacks productivity, or leads to a lack of productivity. When people are not productive, you're not getting your best person, you're not getting your A team from people who are not productive. So all of these problems mean money runs out, and when money runs out, the government is not getting a lot of money in. It becomes a thing of, we have to do what with what we have. When we do what we have, standard is lowered. For example, take the 350 grant that they introduced, I think about 2-3 years ago when we had the pandemic. Who is to say that 350 is enough? Like, who made that decision that 350 is enough? Maybe someone out there who's a beneficiary of the 350 grant would have ideally would want to receive 3.5 and not 350. But at the time, they're not determining 350 based on ideal need. They're determining 350 based on what the government has to offer. Back to what Nasiphi is talking about. Standard is lowered. People basically they tolerate it. They take it. There have been instances, because I had my daughter when I was quite young, so before I could work and before I was able to get medical aid, we would use public hospitals, and not to downplay anything or anything of that sort, but when you're not paying, Nasiphi is correct, you almost feel like you have to take what you have to take. There's been a time where I would, initially with my daughter, who has challenges, she's got neuro challenges, so they would ask me whenever she'd have problems to stay in the hospital with her. They would say, no, don't leave your child, stay with your child overnight, because we're busy. Amanes will tell me, we're busy, it's just we don't have time. But I wouldn't be catered for in terms of where I sleep. She would be there for 3 days and I'll be sleeping on the floor, on the cold as floor. That's where I would be sleeping in order to be able to look after her. So those are just the things that happen. If, for instance, you've got a children's ward and your system says the parent or the mother, the caretaker, has to stay back with the child, why don't you, even if you just give me a chair? And what's worse is when they have to do the doctor has to do their rounds. As a mother, you're almost seen as though like you just like the dustbin in the room. It's like, just get this thing out the way. You have to be up as early as like possible so that you can pack up your little setup on the floor, stand on your feet, or stand outside. The doctor doesn't see you in. Don't disturb, because it's loaded, packed in the room. You take it. How do we get smarter as the voter base, as the active participants in politics, right? I think sometimes we need to remind ourselves, or we need to get reminded, that it's not a matter of leader that we need to change all the time. Ramaphosa can go tomorrow, we will have the same problem. And it's an accountability issue. Again, if you pay for something, for instance, if you're driving a car that's giving you problems, you're not going to drive the car for too long. You probably drive it once, it gives you problems, it gets stuck on the road. Tomorrow, another day, by the 5th time, you're like, listen, I'm done. You sell it, get rid of it, or whatever. That's just a basic mentality right there. So it's not so much about getting a new leader, but it's us then realizing that if we do not get the right accountability structures in place, we are doomed. Moving between EFF, MK, ANC, it's pointless. It's pointless. All of these guys are all about full-blown socialism. So if you think that, no, it's not about Ramaphosa, it's about Paul Mashatile. It's not about Paul Mashatile, it's about Julius Malema. It's not about Julius Malema, it's about Jacob Zuma. You lost. That is, you're not smart about the choice. Because what happens is that these people come in, they inherit an already socialism full-blown system, and that's what they come from. They're all from the same political sort of teachings. They're just going to implement the same thing. And it happens a lot in Africa, where you almost hear a thing of like, no, Africa has got a leadership problem. Yes, to some extent, leadership is important. And I agree with that. I love a good leader, right? Trust me when I say that. But it's not so much about leadership in Africa. It's the fact that Africa is heavily leaning towards socialism. And what that means is that there's just no accountability structures. because people are literally on their knees begging. Their hands are like this. Please give me, give me, give me. I want food. I'm hungry, right? That alone means that they're not picking based on logic. They're not picking. It's not a transactional sort of like back and forth. So that becomes the first and most important thing, is that it's accountability that we need. That is precisely why the ANC just does not see the need to change. They don't give a damn. They do whatever they want. And that is precisely because they know they can get away with it. They know. The fact that people still fill up stadiums whenever they have rallies is they have what they need. They know, okay, we've got a whole lot of people who are dependent on us. If we get out of power, people are going to have issues with water, They see them as God. Hey, without ANC, I'm stuck. I don't have anything. And that becomes one of the problems, is that they don't change because they can get away with absolutely anything. Lastly, we just need to be able to push back. As people who are actively participating in politics, it's important that we know the difference. We need to push back at people who are anti-jobs, who are not serious about creating jobs and removing any barrier that leads to good, decent jobs being created in South Africa, because we know that it's possible. Anyone who stands in the way of that, anyone who stands in the way of economic growth, no matter how they stand in the way of economic growth, because if you take economic growth as sort of like the main achievement or the main thing at the top, then you'll know you need to address crime. You know you need to address your infrastructure. You know you need to keep your streets clean. At least where there's economic activity, there should be no compromise in terms of how those areas need to present itself and clean and we need to just be able to push back on those things. People who speak about having a big government, why must they be over 30 ministers? For what? Currently, we've got a minister for women, we've got a minister for electricity, we've got a minister for minerals and energy, we've got a minister also women. Why do we have a minister of women? Guys, you need to look into the country of Argentina. I know I need to do a bit of a breakdown into that, because Argentina was in the exact same position as what South Africa is in now. And if you think that story went well, for 100 years, they were dealing with a system that was terrible. Inflation increased so much that people could barely afford anything. The government could barely afford to pay government workers. Listen to that. They could not afford to pay government employees. Because that's another thing that the government tends to do, where they say, I will give you jobs. You don't have money. You're government. You don't have money. Government gets money from business. Do not allow these people to fool you guys. Without business, government has no money. And even if they take our minerals you can only go so far. You need to be able to exchange that for money. You can have all the gold in the world. You need someone on the other side who's going to be willing to pay for it. And that's where business comes in. And if there's no one who's willing to pay for it at the price that is suitable to you, you'll be hungry with gold. You know what I mean? You'll be hungry with gold, and nothing is going to change. So government does not make money. Business makes money. Business pays tax to government for operating in the environment. And for government essentially then says, we'll give you protection, we'll give you the land, we'll give you what, you give us tax, we take care of that people. That's a system that works, right? And government does not make money. Do not be fooled. Government should not even be speaking about jobs. Their job as the government is to say, we have an environment that is conducive for people to be able to create jobs, get jobs, and keep their jobs. That is the most crucial thing. And that's how we get smarter. By just increasing the standard, not standard per se, but by increasing the accountability factor that I spoke about. Think about when you pay for something. I know people who listen to my channel. I know you guys are very smart. I am confident. When you pay for something, you do not mess around. Take, for example, no fee paying schools. Did you know that no fee paying schools, it is said that they have the least amount or the least participation from parents. Parents, when they're invited to meetings, they don't pitch. When there's extramural activities, they don't come and support kids. So that all of that just becomes null and void. No one really is participating. And the reason why that's the case is because it's a no fee paying school. There isn't that commitment, right? And that's why over time, and I've highlighted this thing in the past, that why do we still have schools that don't have proper toilets? Parents would have known this before a journalist knows about it, right? Because your child goes to the school every single day, but parents are they're distant from those schools because they're not paying for it. So they're just happy to get anything. They're happy to say, hey, as long as she can wake up, it doesn't matter. So they're happy with that, right? Without necessarily having to push for better or for more standards and. And I think my parting point here is, if not this mentality, if we do not move away from leftist, full-blown socialist leaders who just go around messing around, what is the point of government, guys? Like, what's the point? Ask yourself the question, what's the point? What's the point of having a cabinet? What's the point of having a State of the Nation address? I watched the recent one delivered by Ramaphosa, and I just realized, there's something. What's the point of this? What's the point? The guy does not even speak a single thing about tax breaks. I want to hear about tax breaks. We are living in a two income household right now between myself and my husband, but we need a tax break. We need more tax breaks because we want to invest, we want to increase our property, whatnot. But we tax so much money that the more money we make, the more we get taxed. So what's the point of jumping roles and aiming for promotions, because you just get taxed more money, right? No mention about tax breaks. And what I got from Ramaphosa from the State of the Nation address is that there's a government program for every problem. Government should move away. I always say this. It doesn't work if government gets heavily involved. They just create socialism, where everyone is just dependent. Where we all just wait for government like it's God. Hey, government, please come through. So that's the parting point here, that what is the point if we do not get the absolute best from our leaders? And the easiest, most simplest way for us to get the best out of our leaders is if we increase accountability by allowing us to be, by creating or picking people who are going to increase job creation, make sure that people are earning an income, and make sure that people are able to pay for what they use, pay for your water, pay for your electricity, pay for your schooling. Not amount, whatever, that's not up to me. I'm not discussing that. But people, the only way they can see value, the only way that they can demand the best of something, the proven way is if they pay for it. If they don't pay for it, it's almost like I said, fun. And that's what we need to be looking out for. That's who we need to support. Otherwise, what is the point? And it's worse in the case of South Africa. It's far worse. You'll read about socialism out there, guys. You'll find some of the most deceiving things that are said about socialism. That socialism is actually good. Other systems are evil. What. Hey, listen. Socialism may have a lot of issues, but when you've got socialism plus a corrupt ANC government, it's far worse. Because the little money that's there, they are trying to snatch that money together with their cadres. They're trying to get that money out. So there's even less money that's available. The most sensible system would be to say, open, more markets, more free market, expand your markets, more growth, as opposed to saying more government. Ramaphosa spoke about 9 billion, what. In the hands of who? The same people? Come on. And I think it's almost like they know how to, these guys, they know no one's going to ask about this money. Like, 9 billion is so huge. Like, most people can't even comprehend what that would be like if you were to put in, like, if you were to have it suddenly. It's a huge amount. And that alone can also just make people think, iPhone me, 9 billion, ooh. Not my portion, because it's just too big. That guy was talking about huge numbers. I'm like, where are you getting the money? Huge, 9 billion, 10 billion. People detach from those things because it's so elaborate, right? As opposed to saying 350. Oh, we have 9 billion there, 9 billion there. The language that people understand is getting that email that says, herein attached is an offer letter. That's what people really want, not these programs that you want to talk about, which at the end of the day get more people hooked into government, just thinking that if it's not government, I need government. Anyway, thank you so much for checking out this video. Before you go, please remember to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. I would really appreciate the support, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.